There's a story men grow up believing. A sweet, naive fairy tale whispered through movies, songs, and love stories. That marriage tames chaos. That it turns a woman into your partner, your peace, your home. That once she says, "I do," she'll soften, she'll love harder, she'll build the rest of your life beside you. But what no one tells you is that marriage doesn't change women. It exposes them. It doesn't make her better. It unmasks who she really is when comfort replaces competition, when security replaces effort, when she finally knows you're trapped. You think you married your best friend. But what if you married her representative, the polished, charming version of her that only exists during courtship? Because here's the brutal truth. The woman you dated was the performance. The woman you married is the truth. At first, it's all warmth and laughter. She adores your confidence, praises your work ethic, brags about your strength. You feel seen, respected, admired. You think, finally, someone understands me. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something changes. The admiration fades. The gratitude turns into expectation. The things she once loved about you become the very things she resents. Your drive becomes obsession. Your discipline becomes coldness. Your leadership becomes control. Your boundaries become ego. You'll start hearing new phrases. "We need to communicate more. I don't feel emotionally fulfilled." You've changed. But the irony is you haven't changed at all. You're still the man who carried her through storms, who paid the bills, who stood between her and the world. What's changed is her perception. Because once she no longer fears losing you, she stops valuing what you bring. When you were dating, every text you sent lit her up. Every touch meant something. You were the adventure, the unknown. But after marriage, you become the constant, the background, the thing that's always there, and therefore invisible. Here's what most men never realize. Women are conditioned from birth to seek validation. From their fathers, their teachers, their peers, society. It's all built around being desired. Their reflection isn't a mirror. It's a scoreboard. So when she's single, she's competing for attention. When she's dating, she's performing for affection. But when she's married, the competition ends. The performance stops. And that's when the real psychology begins. She starts to believe that love means comfort, not effort. That communication means confession, not accountability. That equality means authority, not partnership. You start noticing things you can't unsee. How every conversation turns into emotional arbitration. How every disagreement is a referendum on your character. How every expression of masculine confidence is reframed as toxicity. She says she wants a man who listens. But when you listen, she loses respect. She says she wants a man who's vulnerable. But when you open up, she calls you weak. She says she wants equality. But when you demand accountability, she calls it control. And you, thinking you're doing the right thing, try harder. You apologize more. You communicate more. You compromise more. You bend again and again until one day you realize you've become a guest in your own home. Marriage, for a modern woman, often isn't about partnership. It's about validation, stability, and emotional management. She doesn't want a husband. She wants an audience. She doesn't want equality. She wants veto power. She doesn't want love. She wants leverage. When you were dating, she feared losing you. After marriage, she knows she can't. And that's the moment the mask slips. The woman who once said, "I love how strong you are," now says, "You're too controlling." The woman who said, "I love how hard you work," now says, "You're never home." The woman who said, "You make me feel safe," now says, "You make me feel trapped." And you start wondering, did she ever love me? Or did she love how I made her feel about herself? Because love built on validation is not love, it's dependency in disguise. And when the high of being chosen fades, she starts to crave the thrill again. Not by building with you, but by fighting you, by testing you, by trying to break the very structure that once made her feel secure. This is what most men never see coming. That the biggest shift after marriage isn't her love, it's her psychology. That once she knows you can't walk away easily. Not without losing half your assets, your home, maybe even your children. She begins to push, to test, to see how far she can go before you break. And the more you give, the less she respects you. The less you fight back, the colder she becomes. Because deep down, every woman is drawn to strength, even when she swears she wants sensitivity. You'll see it in her eyes. That flicker of disappointment when you yield too quickly. That spark of contempt when you justify yourself instead of standing your ground. And that quiet satisfaction when she realizes she can bend you, because in that moment, she knows she's won. But something inside her dies. Not because she hates you, but because she can't love a man she doesn't respect. That's when the shift happens. The warmth disappears. The tone changes. The woman who once clung to your arm now sleeps facing the opposite direction. The laughter fades, replaced by sighs. The conversations turn from dreams into complaints. And you sit there, staring at the woman across from you at dinner, wondering where your wife went, and who the stranger wearing her face is. But she didn't change. She just ran out of reasons to pretend. Marriage didn't make her different. It made her visible. It starts quietly. You don't even notice it at first. The tone of her voice changes slightly. The warmth in her eyes fades just a little. And the small gestures that used to make you feel loved start disappearing one by one. She still says, "I love you." But it sounds more like a habit than a truth. When you were dating, admiration was effortless. Every joke landed. Every plan you made felt exciting. You were her hero, her safe place, her compass. She looked at you like you were the answer to everything she'd been searching for. But marriage doesn't nurture admiration, it tests it. And most women don't realize how much of their love depends on the illusion of mystery. When she knew she could lose you, she respected you. When she knows you're staying no matter what, she starts to resent you. Why? Because deep down, validation feels more powerful than loyalty. The chase was thrilling, the reward intoxicating. But now that she has you, she begins to take your stability for granted and mistake your consistency for dullness. What once gave her peace now feels like a cage. What once felt safe now feels suffocating. You can see it in how she reacts to your presence. Before, she lit up when you walked into the room. Now, she barely looks up from her phone. Before, she bragged about you to her friends. Now, she compares you to other men behind your back. Before, she said, "I'm so lucky to have you." Now, she says, "You don't do enough." Every small act of provision becomes invisible. Every effort becomes expected. Every sacrifice becomes an obligation. The man who once made her heart race now just pays the bills. And then it begins, the subtle rewriting of history. She starts reinterpreting your past through her current dissatisfaction. The stories you once laughed about together are now examples of how you never really listened. The moments she once adored become evidence of your selfishness. The same behavior she once celebrated now becomes ammunition in her emotional arsenal. This is the silent erosion that destroys modern marriages. Not infidelity, not finances, but familiarity. When the mystery dies, women who built their identity on attention start searching for new fuel. And that's when she starts transforming. Not because she's evil, but because she's hungry. Hungry for the emotional electricity that used to define her youth. Hungry for that feeling of being wanted, of being seen, of being special. You'll start to notice new behaviors. She talks more about her needs. She says she feels unseen. She suddenly needs space. Translation. She's chasing a high that no amount of loyalty can give her. She begins investing more energy outside the marriage than inside it. Her friends become her therapists. Social media becomes her mirror. Strangers' approval starts to matter more than your devotion. She posts more, laughs louder, dresses differently. Not for you, but for the invisible audience she's performing for. Meanwhile, you're trying to fix it. You think if you plan a vacation, buy gifts, help more around the house, she'll soften again. But it doesn't work, because you're trying to solve an emotional problem with logical tools. You're trying to treat a dopamine addiction with devotion. What she's really experiencing isn't boredom. It's withdrawal. Withdrawal from the thrill of being chased, the novelty of being adored, the fantasy of always being the center of attention. Marriage, by its nature, ends that high. And instead of evolving beyond it, she starts craving it again, often without even realizing it. This is where resentment blooms. She starts resenting you for the very stability she once prayed for. She'll say things like, "We've grown apart." What she means is, "I've grown restless." She'll say, "I miss how we used to be." What she means is, "I miss how I felt when I was being pursued." And when you try to talk about it, she doesn't want resolution. She wants reaction. Because reaction means emotion, and emotion means proof that she still has power. The arguments become less about logic and more about testing the bond. She'll poke, provoke, and push, not because she hates you, but because she wants to feel something, even if it's chaos, even if it's pain. That's the emotional shift no one warns men about. Marriage flips a woman's validation source from external admiration to internal security. But when she hasn't developed that inner foundation, she keeps chasing external hits. And the closest available target? You. So she starts treating you like the villain in her personal drama. Every flaw becomes amplified, every misstep magnified. You go from being her anchor to being her excuse for her frustration, her emptiness, her discontent. The irony is cruel. She wanted a man who made her feel safe, and now she resents the safety he provides. She wanted love that felt like home, and now home feels like suffocation. Because deep down, what she misses isn't you. It's the version of herself that existed before you. The one who felt alive, desired, powerful. But instead of looking inward, she looks at you. And suddenly, you're the problem. So you find yourself walking on eggshells, censoring your words, timing your affection, calculating your every move to avoid triggering another emotional storm. You stop expressing your truth. You stop standing your ground. You stop being you. And that's the tragedy. Because the moment you stop being the man she admired, you become the man she resents. And she won't even see that she created it. By the time you reach this stage, something fundamental has shifted. The love that once united you is no longer about connection. It's about control. You start noticing that every conversation has an undertone. Every request carries an invisible test. And every disagreement feels like a courtroom where you're always the defendant. It begins subtly like everything else. She starts phrasing things differently. Not "could you?" but "why didn't you?" Not "I'd like if you helped," but "you never help." Every statement becomes an accusation wrapped in emotion, and every apology you give becomes another brick in the wall she's building between you. You used to feel like her partner. Now you feel like her project. You can't remember the last time she looked at you with admiration. Now it's scrutiny. You feel her measuring you, evaluating you, waiting for mistakes. It's as if she's collecting evidence to justify the resentment she's been storing quietly for months. She doesn't want peace anymore. Peace would mean the storm inside her would have nowhere to go. And make no mistake, she needs that storm. It's what gives her power now. Because when she feels distant from you, she feels powerless. But when she can trigger you, when she can make you flinch, defend, raise your voice, apologize, that's when she feels alive again. That's when she knows she still has influence. Love becomes a performance of tension. Affection becomes conditional. She withholds warmth to make you chase it. She withholds intimacy to make you prove yourself. She uses silence as punishment, tears as weapons, and guilt as a leash. You begin to realize that you're not in a relationship anymore. You're in a psychological chess game, and every move you make is used against you. When you call her out, she cries. When you go quiet, you're emotionally unavailable. When you defend yourself, you're toxic. When you disengage, you're cold. No matter what you do, you lose. Because the game isn't about fairness. It's about control. Here's the secret few men ever understand. When a woman loses attraction, she doesn't always leave. Sometimes she stays and punishes you for the love she no longer feels. She'll test you to see if you can reignite her respect. She'll provoke you to see if there's still fire in you. She'll push every button just to see if you'll finally stand up to her. Not because she wants conflict, but because she wants to feel something real. But the tragedy is, the moment you push back, she plays the victim. She weaponizes her emotions, twists your reaction, and turns your defense into proof of her pain. See? You're angry again. You don't care how I feel. And you start believing her narrative. You start doubting your instincts. You start apologizing for things you didn't do just to restore peace. This is how men lose themselves. Not through shouting matches, not through betrayal, but through quiet erosion. Through slow, strategic guilt. Through a system where love has been replaced by compliance. You find yourself doing things you never would have done before, explaining your every decision, hiding harmless truths, pretending to agree just to avoid another fight. You stop leading. You stop expressing. You stop existing as an individual. And the saddest part? She doesn't even realize she's doing it. Because, in her mind, this isn't manipulation, it's emotional survival. She genuinely believes she's communicating, standing up for herself, teaching you how to love her better. She doesn't see the control. She only feels the fear of losing power. There's a cruel paradox at the heart of it all. The more you yield to her emotions, the more unstable she becomes. The more you try to make her happy, the less happy she gets. Because love built on control will always collapse under its own weight. In her heart, she's fighting two wars, one against time and one against reality. You, unfortunately, become the battlefield. The woman who once said, "I trust you," now scrolls through your messages when you're asleep. The woman who once said, "I love your independence," now accuses you of secrecy when you need space. The woman who once said, "You make me feel safe," now calls your calmness emotional detachment. Because when admiration dies, fear takes its place. And fear seeks control. So she builds rules, routines, and rituals meant to protect her ego, and you become the enforcer of her insecurities. You'll hear things like, "You don't care about me anymore. If you really loved me, I just want to feel special again." But what she really means is, "I'm terrified that without control, I'll feel invisible again." You'll try to reason with her. You'll show empathy. You'll explain. But logic doesn't reach a heart that's addicted to emotional chaos. She doesn't want understanding. She wants intensity. And so you find yourself trapped between two impossible options. Be strong and she calls you heartless. Be soft and she calls you weak. Either way, you lose. But the truth is, it's not you she's fighting. She's fighting the void inside herself. The one that opened when admiration turned into entitlement, when respect turned into resentment, when love turned into control. She's fighting the death of the fantasy, the version of herself that only existed when you were still a mystery. And she'll burn the marriage to the ground before she admits that what she's mourning isn't you. It's her own reflection. And that's when you finally understand. She doesn't want your love anymore. She wants your surrender. It doesn't happen in one night. There's no grand explosion, no final argument that shatters everything at once. It's slower than that, quieter, crueler. It happens in the pauses between your words, in the way she no longer meets your eyes, in the silence that fills the house even when both of you are home. One morning you wake up beside her, and the bed feels cold, colder than it should for two people sleeping inches apart. You look at her, and for a brief second you realize you're not looking at your wife anymore. You're looking at a stranger wearing her skin. She still moves the same way, still makes coffee the same way, still hums that same old tune in the kitchen. But there's no warmth behind it. No softness. Every movement feels mechanical, like she's acting in a play she no longer wants to perform in. The woman who once couldn't stop talking to you now avoids conversation altogether. When she does speak, it's sharp, short, efficient words designed for logistics, not love. "What time will you be home? Can you pick up the kids? We're out of milk." You used to talk about dreams. Now you only talk about duties. She starts spending more time outside the house. Yoga classes, work friends, late dinners that never used to exist. You don't even ask anymore because deep down you already know the answer. She's looking for something that doesn't live here anymore. Something she buried years ago, and now she's digging through the world to find it again. You catch yourself wondering, when did we stop being us? Was it after the first fight she never forgave you for? After the day she said she needed space and you actually gave it? Or maybe it was when she stopped reaching for your hand during movies and started scrolling through her phone instead. At first, you think it's just a phase. You tell yourself every couple goes through rough patches. You try harder, flowers, dinners, vacations. But her eyes don't light up anymore. You're not her man. You're her mirror. A mirror that reflects everything she doesn't want to see. Her age, her choices, her fading spark. And so she starts to rewrite the story. We were never really happy. You changed. I was pretending. You listen, stunned, as she takes years of love, effort, memories, your entire shared life, and reduces it to a narrative where she's the victim and you're the mistake. That's how she copes. She can't face the reality that her discontent comes from within, so she projects it onto you. Because it's easier to blame you than to confront the truth, that she destroyed her own peace trying to chase a feeling that never lasts. And you sit there at the dinner table, staring across at the woman you once thought you'd grow old with, and realize you're mourning someone who's still alive. You try to talk. You try to reach her. You say, "What happened to us?" She sighs, looks down and says, "I don't know. I just don't feel the same anymore." And that's it. No tears. No closure. Just apathy, the kind that cuts deeper than any argument ever could. Because when a woman stops feeling, she stops fighting. And when she stops fighting, it's already over. The love that once felt like fire now feels like ashes you're both pretending not to see. She doesn't hate you. She doesn't love you either. She's indifferent, and that's worse than hate. Hate still has passion in it. Indifference is the death of everything. Soon, the intimacy disappears completely. Not just physically, but emotionally. She doesn't confide in you anymore. You don't make her laugh. You're not her comfort. You're her inconvenience. She'll stay for a while, out of duty, out of fear, out of convenience. But her soul is already gone. And when she finally leaves, whether physically or emotionally, it won't be sudden. It'll be the conclusion to a process that began the moment she stopped admiring you. You'll look back and realize that every warning was there. The coldness, the criticism, the contempt. You just didn't want to believe it. You'll remember the girl who once looked at you like you were her whole world. And you'll finally accept that she doesn't exist anymore. She vanished the moment she no longer needed to impress you. The moment comfort replaced fear, and validation replaced love. That's the hardest part to accept. That the woman who once promised forever didn't break her word. She just became someone else. Marriage didn't ruin her. It revealed her. And by the time you finally see it, it's too late. You'll sit in the quiet of your own home, the one you built together, and realize you're living with a ghost. Not of her body, but of who she used to be. And when you finally stand up to leave, to reclaim your peace, she'll look at you with confusion, as if she doesn't understand why you're walking away. Because to her, the story ended long ago. You were just too loyal to turn the last page.